How are you? Welcome, welcome. So, here we are. I was inspired to go live and share a little bit of a story, a little bit of a transmission, and to hang out with everyone. How is everyone? Some of what I want to share is about community, intimacy, and nature. If you've read the title, whether it's there or there, however you see it. And I hope you hear me okay. I have a new mic. I am outside. And, we'll see what happens. We'll see how it flows. Yeah, so community. This has been an ongoing thread, an ongoing conversation that has been very present for a while now. And over the last 2 weekends, where I've been present in a group community setting, it's been a big part of the conversation in community, talking about the medicine and power of community. And very, very powerful. And so I'd like to open up, I hope you'll be able to follow this thread and this transmission here as I lead through, the threads of community, intimacy, and nature. And so let's begin with community. Let's start there. And so the weekend that just passed, is really beautiful because, well, I should say the last 2 weekends were pretty powerful because the weekend before I was in a women's retreat and offering some yoga, and it was so powerful, and I'll share a story about that later, and when we get into the intimacy part. And then the weekend that just passed, to be with the Kirtan community, and it's a practice that's very dear to my heart, and I've been missing it very much as to the regulations here in this province. We haven't been able to gather indoors and sing. And this was the first outdoor Kirtan practice that I've participated in, and is actually being offered. Normally I'm the one offering. It was being offered by someone else in the community, and I felt the call deeply to go. And they invited me to offer a mantra, which was lovely. And everyone I spoke to there was, about a dozen people there. We spoke about community. And we spoke about, every single person mentioned that upon arrival of entering that circle, we were in this beautiful circle of trees beside the ocean. And as each person entered that circle, we all said we felt the same thing. It was like this overwhelming tears of joy as we felt that sense of community again. We were able to commune with each other. We were able to share a very beautiful and sacred practice with each other for about an hour and a half of chanting. And as soon as it was my turn to lead, it became challenging all of a sudden. All I wanted to do was sit and cry. It took a lot of effort to just really sit and absorb what it's like to be held in community, what it's like to really be there. and to co-create that space. And it is a very powerful medicine that, I always knew the power of community. It was always this knowing in the mind. I spoke to it for many years as someone who has facilitated, rituals and circles for the last 15 years. It's something that is a big part of my intention of showing up and sharing space, is to co-create community and cultivate community, safe community, sacred spaces, right? And not until the recent events, and we were, in lockdown, and we weren't able to, hold these spaces as we were doing. So I really, really began to understand the importance, when it was kind of removed from my life, the importance that community has for me. And I know I'm not alone in this. I know that a lot of other folks, share this as well. And it felt like, I was actually facilitating for the last couple of years a monthly kirtan offering, where we sit for 2 hours, call and response mantra. And when that was removed out of my life and I wasn't able to do that offering, it felt like part of me died. Like I felt this hole in my soul, and it's hard to explain. And I was sharing it with some of the group that I was with on Sunday, in practice, and they said the same. And the main person leading, she's a beautiful soul, and I said to her, that was one of the things that I struggled with the most, was not being able to hold space for that practice with others, and how much it fueled me. And she looked at me and she said, "Yes, I understand, Natalie. Sometimes we don't know the meaning until it's gone, how much it means to us." And so the last, year and a half, 2 years, it's been, revisiting my relationship with community. How can I, honor this sacred sense and medicine of community in new ways, to cultivate those new pathways. And so one of the new ways is this is, I'm here in the world of the ethers, the internet, on social media. And there are some beautiful ways we can share connection and community here on social media. And so that has brought me into this deep sense of, how can I continue to nurture these platforms that I utilize in a safe and sacred way, and connect to other, sacred spaces? How can I show up here in a way that offers that sense of community, so that others can, receive that invitation as well? And even this conversation, I invite you, this is always an invitation. Everything I share here, this in my world is a community. So I invite you to share your thoughts. How is this landing for you? I'd love to hear from you. This is part of the community, right? Us sharing conversation. And yeah, so that's the layer 1, community. So now I feel called to dive into the thread of intimacy. Let's weave into that thread of intimacy here. Because when we are showing up in community and cultivating these connections with others, they are a reflection and a mirror of the intimacy we have and share and cultivated within our own selves. And so the capacity in which we can hold space for intimacy for ourselves, to be intimate with oneself, is how we, are able to share that with others. And that shows up in community spaces. So let's dive deep into that intimacy. And intimacy is it's really interesting. There's a few layers. There's one interesting layer. There's an account I follow. His name is West, and it's Obsidian Blade. If you don't follow him, feel called to. Check it out. West at Obsidian Blade. I just love his conversations. He mostly does live IGTVs. And really, really great conversations. Expansive. And one of the things he discussed was an aspect of intimacy and touch. How we are really, in these current times, we are really lacking that touch, that form of intimacy. And it doesn't necessarily have to come from, a romantic partner. Touch can be, non-sexual. It can be in a friendship kind of way. It can be in a nurturing way. We can hug a friend. We can, place a arm on a colleague for comfort if that's welcomed. There's so much of that is removed from our behaviors at this moment in time as we are placing our 6 feet distancing, right? And it's weird. It's challenging. There's so many feels. There's so many feelings surrounding this. And one of the things that I've noticed is my relationship with intimacy and, because I'm a hugger. I love hugging people. Because now it's like a custom, on the weekends when I was in community, it's like, oh, do you hug? Are you open to a hug? That's what people ask now. And I'm like, yes. And I just open up my arms. And and I miss it. I really, really miss, hugging my clients, hugging people. And it's something I really, really enjoy, that close, intimate connection. And so, a story of intimacy that I'd love to bring into this conversation. Happened the other weekend in the women's circle in the retreat. And, there might be some tears as I share this. It's, I'm still processing all the love and all the joy and all the beauty that has transpired. And so, it'll flow as it flows, right? And so I had an incredible moment of intimacy with a sister that I had just met. I had just met most of the women there. And so it was 3 nights. And on the second day, after our first night, after our sharing circle, I was all like, sweaty from when I cry, sweat. So I thought I should go to the river and bathe. That's our bathing section, was the river. And so I'm grabbing my things, and we're all staying in this yurt, and my towel, and one of the other women looks at me and says, "Oh, are you going to the river to bathe?" And I responded, yes, I am. And she has her bag open and looks at me and says, "Are you wearing a bathing suit? What's appropriate to wear as we bathe?" And I looked at her and I said, "Anything that makes you feel comfortable." I said, "I will be bathing in the nude. And just to let you know, but you're welcome to bathe however you desire." And she says, "Okay." Grabs her things, we go, and it was just the two of us in that moment. And we put our things by the river, we set up our soap, and we take off our clothes and hop in, and we're washing our hair and having conversation and really getting to know each other, you know, just these beautiful, beautiful, deep sisterly conversations that go beyond, oh, how's the weather, you know? and I could feel like this deep, powerful moment. It was just like, oh, this is a beautiful moment that I really want to embrace and hold on to. I just loved being in that moment with my new sister. And when we were done, we toweled, she was so sweet. She said, do you mind checking me for leeches? I'm really paranoid about the leeches. And so I said, yes, spin around, I'll check you for leeches. And and then we went back to the yurt and went off in our own little quiet time. And then the next day, when we had our following sharing circle, after ceremonies and events and things, and yoga, part of her sharing was the moment that we had bathing in the river, and how it was a sensual intimacy that she had never experienced before, and how healing, how deeply healing that was for her to bathe with another woman for the first time. And she was emotional as she was sharing it. And then I became emotional and had the box of Kleenex and recognized in that moment it was like a remembering. You know, Spirit was like, yeah, the more that we show up in our wholeness and our vulnerability, the more that we cultivate this deep intimacy within us, and we show up in that space, you know, in spaces, in our beautiful energy, you know, we have no idea the impact that it has by simply being us, by simply being in the moment. Is so impactful, is a powerful transmission and medicine for others to receive. I had no idea that she was receiving the sisterhood connection of intimacy in that moment. I know I was receiving a beautiful moment. I had no idea what she was receiving, right? And it was a beautiful reminder of that intimacy that we have often lost within our culture. You know, we don't hear of too many adults bathing together in a river. You know, that might be to some people listening, whoa, that's, you know, way out there. And it's powerful. I realize I'm like, wow, I want to do that more. I really want to do that more. And then so the next day, you know, more sisters came by the river, and it was like larger and larger groupings, you know, really powerful. And we were laughing and giggling and, you know, crying and sharing all the beautiful things. And there was also something about those who had showed up that particular weekend that we all just really, really showed up. I honestly had never been with a more powerful group of women who fucking just showed up in their full vulnerability, where they are at, in full transparency. And I am still receiving the beauty of that fullness, right? And it is nurturing the conversation that I've been having with my own intimacy. So thank you, sweet sisters who were there. Yeah. And then so that leads me into the next thread. So we discussed community, intimacy, and that leads us into nature. You know, there was a discussion I shared last night. I was in someone else's membership group on a live group call, and we talked about our nature, our true nature, that we are nature. We are nature. I don't think I could ever say that enough. And this is a reminder. I know if you're here, if you're listening, you know that you're part of nature. We're not separate from nature. We are part of this ecosystem. You know, these trees, these wildflowers that you see behind me, you know, we are not separate from that. We are part of that ecosystem. We are the ecosystem. And there's like micro ecosystems within the macro ecosystem. You know, it is amazing to think about. But nature, how does that even connect with intimacy and community? We are always in community, in deep relationship with the entire ecosystem. The ecosystem, you can even think about it like a community, you know? And the more that we commune in nature and sit with nature, observe through the lens of neutrality, you know, that neutral state of, which can be challenging sometimes, observing nature, you know, when you see like, you know, one animal eating another, and it can be, you know, interesting to stay in that neutral state as we observe nature. And the more that we sit and observe nature, commune with nature, be in nature, the more we remember and observe that we are not separate from that nature. And when we engage in community, we are also engaging with our true nature. That is, you know, that is part of our innate nature. One of the medicines that deeply feeds us. And in our culture today, it's not as embedded as it used to be, you know, once upon a time. And so this remembering of our true nature is also directly linked and has a direct relationship to our intimacy. If you are cultivating a relationship with intimacy, spend time in nature. Become intimate with nature. You know, work on being in that neutral observer. The mind is always, you know, placing these judgments, these labels, putting everything in boxes and solving problems. You know, that's the mind. That's what the mind does. But can we spend time in the stillness beyond the mind? You know, the mind's a great tool, but it's not always right. All those random thoughts that pop in are not always the truth, but that stillness that we can, you know, really sit within ourselves. There is this powerful place, you know, when we are deep into the woods or sitting by the ocean or in the mountains, whatever nature, or in the desert. There's no deserts here where I am, but trying to think of other nature scenes. Whatever nature scenes that you are surrounded in and that you are illuminated by invites a deep, deep stillness. And when you connect to that stillness, you are reminded of this incredible, powerful stillness and space within. You know, that space of neutrality, of your intuition, of your true nature. And it is definitely a practice to visit that space, to nurture that space, to cultivate that space. And so one of the ways is to spend time in community, but another way is to spend time in your practices, to spend time in stillness, spend time in nature. Hold space for that. Make sure you carve space in your day, in your week, in your month, in your years for that. And so I would love to kind of wrap all of these concepts and 3 layers together, you know, the community and intimacy in nature, by acknowledging the deep, deep, powerful medicine that we are. You know, each and every one of us carry this beautiful frequency, this beautiful medicine that we have full capacity to receive when we cultivate the time to do so. It is illuminated. Our medicine can definitely be illuminated when we are in community with others who also share these intentions, who also light you up, who are also doing the work. You know? And it is illuminated, our deep medicine is illuminated when we can become intimate with all aspects of ourselves. The shadow parts and the light parts and everything in between, all the gray areas, you know? Become intimate with that. So, yeah. I hope that this transmission was cohesive. And I would love to hear what you received from some of these stories, you know? Storytelling is such a powerful medicine and way of sharing transmission. And I hope that you are also receiving some of these powerful vibes that, you know, I've invited into this container, into this conversation, that I have carried forth from that, you know, women's retreat I was just on, and community space I was just in 2 days ago. And I really hope that you can also feel that. And as we wrap up this video, if you'd like to invite yourself to maybe pause, spend a few moments with your eyes closed and a hand on your heart, if that feels good for you, to feel this community space. This is community. Every single person who is watching live now, who will be watching in the future, you know, there is no time. We are all in community with each other right here in this thread. So invite yourself to close your eyes to take some deep breaths, feeling this container and community, to receive from your own intimate beauty and medicine. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Hey, beautiful soul. If you are curious about the work I do, feeling deeply called to embody your medicine, I would really love to connect with you. Offer a no pressure conversation with no obligation or pressure to book sessions. Let's simply get to know each other and connect with you. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a beautiful day.